The storm had rolled in without warning, an electric tempest dancing across the violet sky of Series 9. Lightning forked across the horizon, illuminating the jagged peaks in the distance. One particularly violent bolt struck the old power line behind the farmhouse, sending a surge through the system. The lights died, silence fell, Reeve didn't flinch. The former soldier, now farmer, set down his half-filled water jug and reached for the flashlight on the wall. Its beam flickered to life as he grabbed the old plasma rifle from above the door. Just habit, he told himself, but old habits never died, especially not when you've spent 30 years in Earthguard. Another flicker. The motion sensor in the barn blinked red once, then twice. He was already moving. The barn door creaked open under the weight of wind and dust. Reeve stepped in, sweeping the beam across rusted tools, crates of nutrient grain, and piles of dry fodder. Nothing, then movement. In the far corner, curled beneath a worn tarp and bales of hay, something shifted. He approached slowly, rifle lowered but ready. The smell hit first, ozone, blood, and something faintly metallic. Then the flashlight caught two wide, luminous eyes staring back at him. Eyes that shimmered with unnatural clarity, reflecting more than just light. A child, but not human. Its skin was translucent, tinted with pale cyan beneath a layer of grime. A glowing red glyph pulsed faintly on its wrist. Alien script Reeve couldn't read, but recognized from war footage long buried in memory. The child's shoulder was torn open, plasma burned, raw and bleeding. It trembled but didn't move, didn't speak. "Easy," Reeve said quietly, lowering himself to one knee. "I'm not here to hurt you." The child didn't respond. It just stared, eyes full of something deeper than fear, something closer to resignation. Then, above them, the night split open. A rumble echoed through the sky. Reeve, instinctively, looked up through the roof slats. A sleek black vessel tore across the stratosphere, its engines howling against the wind. A sweeping beam of light scanned the fields. Seconds later, a signal crackled across the old comm tower. "Target remains at large. Initiate thermal sweep." Reeve's grip on the rifle tightened. He looked down again. The child hadn't moved. In that moment, with the storm raging and the past clawing at his spine, Reeve made a choice, one that would unravel everything he thought was buried. He reached forward and pulled the tarp over the child. "You stay quiet," he whispered, "and I'll keep them off your back." Outside, the storm howled louder, and so did the war Reeve thought he'd left behind. Reeve hadn't always been a man of silence and soil. There was a time, nearly 2 decades ago, when his voice carried over the roar of plasma fire, when every order he gave could shift the tide of battle. As Commander Reeve Talvin of Earthguard's 7th Recon Division, his name once meant something across the scattered colonies of the Orion Belt. But now, at 57, he was just another forgotten warhound living off hydroponic crops and filtered well water on a quiet patch of dirt called Series 9. The war had ended 15 years ago, or at least that's what the politicians claimed. After the Treaty of Orion, Earth had bent the knee to the Sarathi Dominion, the reptilian overlords who once scorched entire sectors with impunity. A fragile peace was brokered, Earthguard was dissolved, and its soldiers scattered like broken shards across the frontier. Some turned mercenary, others vanished. Reeve did both. He bought a strip of land no one wanted, far from surveillance towers, trade hubs, and anyone who still remembered the war. The soil on Series 9 was thin, bitter, and barely yielded enough to live. But it was quiet, and Reeve no longer trusted places with noise. Each morning, he tended the vertical sprout towers, adjusted their nutrient flow, and spoke only when the machines demanded it. By afternoon, he checked the solar grid, repaired his outdated irrigation drones, and watched the twin suns sink behind the rust-red cliffs. In the evenings, he made tea, pulled out a battered datapad, and wrote in his journal, encrypted, untraceable, broadcasting fragments of memory to Epoch 9, a long-decommissioned satellite still orbiting the system. The logs were always addressed the same way. "To my daughter. I hope the stars are gentler to you than they ever were to me. She had died in the war, not as a soldier. She had only been 11. It was during the infamous Perrin sweep a campaign designed to root out Sarathi cells on a border moon. The intelligence was wrong. The enemy had fled weeks before Earthguard's arrival. What remained in the zone was a small outpost. Civilians, mostly women and children. Reeve had signed the order for orbital clearance without hesitation. It was standard protocol. Only after the operation did he see the footage, the faces, the aftermath, the tiny hands still clutching a stuffed creature in the rubble. He hadn't slept properly since, and now, all these years later, that ghost returned, in the form of a wounded alien child shivering beneath his hay. The night after the storm, Reeve sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the empty teacup in his hands. The lights still flickered from time to time, courtesy of the damaged transformer. Outside, the barn was dark and silent. He should have reported it. The law was clear. Any unregistered alien life form, especially Sarathi, had to be turned in within 24 hours. Harboring one was treason. Reeve had always been a man who followed orders. Always, until now, he hadn't even meant to help. His first instinct, upon seeing the child, was to raise his weapon. It was the eyes that stopped him. Not the color, not the shape, but the expression. Terror without resistance. Not defiance, not even pain. Just the quiet acceptance of whatever was to come. He had seen that expression once before. "Commander, the clearance code's been confirmed. Bombing run authorized. Copy, initiate sequence." A pause, a child's face, then silence. He rubbed his hands over his face, as if trying to wash away a memory that had calcified into his skin. By morning, he'd set up a temporary med patch on the child's shoulder, using leftover field supplies. The wound was cauterized, but it would need real care soon. The child barely moved. He assumed it was a she, watched him with wide, unblinking eyes and did not speak. Her skin pulsed faintly under her cloak, a bioluminescent trait common to the Sarathi subcastes. He hadn't seen one this small before. Too small to be a soldier, too young to be a threat. And yet, that blinking glyph on her wrist said otherwise. He recognized it now, though he hadn't seen it since the ceasefire. The crest of the Sidari clade asterisk, an outlawed rebel sect considered enemies of both Earth and the Sarathi Dominion. What in all hells was a rebel child doing this deep in farming territory? He didn't want to know. Reeve moved through the rest of the day in a haze. His routines offered no comfort. He heard the engines again at midday, a patrol ship slicing through the sky, its scanning beam tracing the hills just south of his land. He lowered the heat signature of his greenhouse and reactivated the old jamming field, relics from a time when he expected trouble, not tomatoes. By dusk, he returned to the barn. The child was asleep, or pretending to be. He left a canteen of water and half a protein bar near her bedroll. Before he turned to leave, she opened her eyes, slowly, calmly. There was no fear this time, only a question. Unspoken. Why? Reeve couldn't answer her, not then. Maybe not ever. He simply nodded once and stepped into the night air, heavy, dry, electric. Somewhere out there, the war still lingered in fragments, in laws, in engines, in memories that never died. But here, in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, one man had made a choice. He would not let another child die because of him, even if it meant becoming the thing he had once feared most. By the third day, the child had stopped trembling. Reeve noticed it first in the way she sat, no longer hunched in the corner like a wounded animal, but upright, alert. Her breathing had evened out, and the gash on her shoulder had begun to scab beneath the biospray and layered medfoam he'd applied. She still didn't speak, but there was awareness in her eyes now. Intelligence. Reeve found himself studying her more than he intended. The way she moved, the way she responded to tone and light, the way she watched him when he wasn't looking. He had asked her name once, quietly, without expectation. She depointed to herself, then drawn 3 shapes in the dust. A curved line, 2 dots, and a diagonal slash. Reeve recognized the glyph, from an old Sarathi dialect used in underground transmissions during the war. Luma, he repeated aloud. The child blinked once. That was enough. That night he didn't write in his journal. It was the following morning, sky a dull gray, wind restless, that the patrol arrived. Reeve spotted the ship first. A Sarathi Chaser-class scout, matte black with a low, whining engine signature. It dropped just beyond the ridge, settling on its anti-grav pads like a wasp preparing to strike. Two soldiers disembarked, one carrying a long-range bioscanner, the other gripping a short-range particle repeater. Reeve didn't panic. He moved like he had during the war, deliberate, calm, automatic. Luma was still in the barn, likely asleep. He took only a moment to slide open the old bunker hatch hidden beneath the compost shed. It hadn't been touched in years, but the magnetic lock hissed open with a satisfying click. Down, he told her when she looked up at him. No sound, no light, no matter what. She didn't hesitate. The hatch sealed shut behind her just as the knock came at the front door. Reeve opened it with one hand still resting behind his back, brushing the edge of his belt holster. The Sarathi officer on the porch was tall, even by their species standards, covered head to toe in black mesh armor, its helmet equipped with a breathing vent and voice modulator. Reeve Talvin, the voice rasped through a static filter. Not a question, depends who's asking. We're conducting a biological sweep. We have reason to believe an unregistered entity passed through this sector within the last 48 hours. You think it stopped for tea? Reeve asked flatly. The Sarathi didn't flinch. It raised the scanner, sweeping the porch, then turned its sensor toward the barn. Any unusual activity on your property? Just the crops being stubborn. The second soldier stepped closer, more aggressive. Do you grant access for a sweep? Don't have much of a choice, do I? The Sarathi didn't answer. It simply walked past him. For 10 long minutes, Reeve watched them scan every square meter, fields, silo, barn, compost station. His heart beat steady, but his mind raced with variables. How long the scanner could penetrate the bunker lining, whether they'd detect the heat signature Luma might give off, how fast he could grab the repeater hidden in the irrigation unit if things went south. Eventually, the soldiers returned. No contact, the first said, but before departing, it pulled a palm-sized object from its belt, something sleek and disc-like. Without asking, it pressed it to Reeve's exterior wall. What the hell is that? Reeve asked. Environmental monitor. Standard surveillance protocol. Any sudden biological activity above baseline will be flagged. You're planting a tracker. Call it a precaution. The ship lifted off moments later, disappearing beyond the ridge. Reeve didn't move until the dust settled. Then he exhaled, slow and quiet. That night, he brought Luma a bowl of reheated protein stew and a new blanket. She hadn't spoken a word, but she met his eyes now without flinching. After dinner, she pulled a piece of chalk from her pocket. How she had it, Reeve had no idea, and knelt by the far wall of the bunker. Slowly, carefully, she began to draw. Reeve watched in silence as the image took shape. A ship, sleek, spiked, unmistakably Sarathian design, but modified. At its core was a strange sigil, a stylized swirl with 3 dots painted upside down. Reeve froze. He'd seen that symbol during the final years of the war. Rebels, Sarathi, who opposed the Dominion's rule. They called themselves the Inversion Asterisk, a name born from their desire to turn the Empire inside out. Most were dead, the rest hunted. You're one of them, Reeve murmured, more to himself than to her. Luma didn't answer. She just stared at the symbol, fingers resting on the final chalk stroke. Reeve stood for a long time, hands on his hips, heart pounding. She wasn't just a child. She was carrying something. A message, a memory, a map. Whatever it was, the Sarathi wanted it silenced, and now it was hiding under his roof. Reeve stepped back, sitting heavily on the bunker's old supply crate. His eyes fell to the dusty floor, where his own boots had tracked in dried mud. For a moment, he felt like he was looking at a battlefield again. Lines drawn, choices made, lives changed. He'd sworn never to take sides again. never to point another rifle, never to decide who deserved saving. And yet he looked up. Luma was watching him, unblinking, waiting. "Damn it, girl," he muttered under his breath, because deep down he already knew. The moment he opened that bunker, the war had found him again. The transmission came at midnight. A faint hum pierced the bunker's silence as Luma placed a small metallic node on the floor, something she had kept hidden inside her tunic. It whirred softly, projecting a three-dimensional map into the air above her palm. Starfields twisted, coordinates shimmered, and at the center, hovering in bright blue light, was *Ehorim*, one of Jupiter's long-abandoned moons, now a dark, frozen rock in the outskirts of Dominion space. Reeve stared at it for a long time, arms crossed. "This is where they're hiding?" he asked, voice hoarse. Luma nodded. Her fingers danced through the light, zooming in on a cratered ridge that masked an underground hangar. "Still active?" Reeve questioned. She turned to him and tapped her chest. Her glowing wrist sigil pulsed in response. She wasn't just running from the Sarathi. She was carrying the key to the rebellion's last stronghold. 2 nights later, the ship arrived. No engine blaze, no sonic boom. It slipped through the upper atmosphere like a whisper, matte hull, grav shields, and cloaking pulses masking its descent. Reeve had seen this kind of stealth before. Back during the *Sindar rebellions, Earthguard had used similar tactics. The craft landed in the dry gulch behind his eastern field, hidden from view. He was already there, waiting, rifle slung but safety on. 4 figures stepped out, cloaked in tattered gear, their faces marked with rebellion glyphs, exiles, survivors. One of them, a tall, sharp-eyed female with scarred skin and a metal collar fused into her neck, froze when she saw Reeve. "Talvin," she said, low and cautious. Reeve's jaw clenched. "I'm not that man anymore." But they knew him, all of them. The name, Reeve Talvin, still echoed in their war stories. He had commanded the Omega Drop, the final Earth assault that crippled Sarathi leadership before the ceasefire. To them, he wasn't a ghost. He was a legend. They didn't speak of the innocent lives lost. They only spoke of victories. "We came for the girl," the leader said. "She's the carrier of the Nexus signal. Without her, the Iorim base will remain sealed." "And then what?" Reeve asked, voice flat. "Then we fight back." He shook his head. "I'm done fighting. I'm just a farmer." The woman stepped closer, her voice lowering. "We don't need a soldier. We need a mind. Someone who knows how the Dominion thinks, someone who's beaten them before." "No," Reeve replied. "I beat people, not systems. That's why I left." A long silence passed between them. "We won't force you," she said finally, and they didn't. They took Luma's data node, left her with Reeve, for now, and promised to return once the path to Iorim was confirmed. Their cloaked ship disappeared before dawn, but the Dominion had been watching too. That same night, a high-pitched frequency screamed through the air, a sound only Reeve's defense grid could detect. Then silence, then flame. The first explosion rocked the old greenhouse, shredding steel and shattering glass. His emergency sensors lit up red, multiple life forms inbound. His hands moved without thought, powering down the grid, activating the interior lockdown. He sprinted to the bunker. "Luma!" She was already waiting at the door, eyes wide. "Stay with me, no matter what." They didn't have time to run. Drop pods rained down like black fireflies. 3, then 5, then more. Dominion hunters, armor-plated, cold-eyed, swept across the property with mechanical precision. Reeve fought like it was 2098 again. He used every scrap of knowledge he'd buried. Trip mines along the field rows. EMP flares in the irrigation trench. A pulse bomb wired to the old hover plow. But they came fast. Too fast. He was forced back, hooded into the barn, defending inch by inch. Plasma fire lit the night in blue and orange. He managed to drop 3, maybe 4, but more kept coming. One of the walls collapsed under pressure. Smoke choked the air. His arm bled where a blast had grazed him. Then he heard her scream. Through the haze, 2 soldiers dragged Luma toward a skimmer transport. One aimed a blaster at her. She struggled, but weakly. Reeve didn't think. He moved. He charged through smoke and debris, gunning down one soldier in a burst of blinding light. The other turned too slow. Reeve tackled him, landing blow after blow until the creature stopped moving. But it was too late. A drone above fired a paralyzing beam, and before Reeve could reach her again, the transport lifted into the night, Luma trapped inside, eyes wide in terror. Reeve dropped to his knees in the dirt. All around him, the farm burned. He could hear the faint sound of the Dominion signal fading overhead. Dawn came. Ash covered the field. The once thriving hydro towers lay in ruin. The tracker the patrol had planted earlier had clearly been used to pinpoint the location. Reeve sat alone beside the shattered remains of the barn, the old plasma rifle resting across his knees. His body ached, but not nearly as much as his mind. He had failed again, failed a child, failed a promise. But as he sat there, blood dried on his cheek. Something inside him shifted, not rage, not grief. Conviction. He stared out at the cratered field, the empty sky. "Not again," he whispered. "I won't let it end this way." 15 years ago, he had walked away from the battlefield. Now it had come to his doorstep, and this time he wouldn't run. The asterisk obsidian crown hovered like a silent titan over the atmosphere of Saturn's outer moon, pitch black, angular, and endlessly vast. From afar, it looked like a shard of obsidian piercing space itself, a fortress ship and command center of the Dominion's inner circle. And somewhere deep within its reinforced hull, Luma was being held. Reeve stood on the edge of the rebel command deck, aboard Asterisk Wraith Echo Asterisk, the stealth transport that had ferried him and the remaining rebels to this point of no return. His fingers gripped the metal railing as he studied the faint energy signatures skimming the hull of the Asterisk Crown Asterisk. It was armored against everything: ballistic, EMP, radiation, subspace hacks, everything but its own arrogance. "We have a 10-minute window," said the rebel tactician beside him. "Once the outer patrols loop behind the thermal blind spot, we glide in." "You sure about this?" "No," Reeve muttered, "but I'm doing it anyway." They moved in silence, slipping beneath the sensory net. The Wraith Echo Asterisk S cloak shimmered against the reactor heat from the Asterisk Crown Asterisk, and then, like a splinter into flesh, it pierced a maintenance shaft and latched on. Reeve led the team through the access tunnel, each step echoing against the ancient steel. They wore no ID tags, used no lights. Everything was based on Luma's sketches, the map she had drawn from memory before the ambush. The strategy was simple in theory. Use circuit inversion, a method Reeve developed during the war to confuse thermal sensors by temporarily disrupting the heat signature pattern of intruders. In practice, it meant traveling barefoot in degrees Celsius, applying microgel to their exposed skin, and injecting controlled ice pulse serums into their bloodstream. Painful but necessary. Reeve clenched his jaw as the serum hit. Nerves burned, limbs stiffened, but the sensors didn't see them. The first obstacle: a biosensor floor grid tied to movement and oxygen levels. Reeve remembered the calibration range, between 60 and 90 ppm. They synchronized their breaths, each shallow inhale timed to a silent count. One misstep meant death, but they passed. Next, a locked gate sealed with encrypted plasma nodes. Not a physical key, but a memory. Luma had described it, a 3-part sequence based on the Sarathi belief in triadic cycles: birth, decay, rebirth. Reeve closed his eyes, remembering her fingers tracing the symbols. He input the sequence. Letter 3D5, the lock disengaged. "Still got it," he muttered under his breath. Inside, the halls were quieter than he remembered. Dominion ships always felt alive, pulsing with synthetic hums and whispers from their AI cores. But this one felt deadened. Maybe it was the weight of what they carried, or maybe it was what was waiting ahead. At Corridor B-17, the firefight began. A Dominion patrol spotted movement too fast. Reeve took point, shouting cover commands in Earthguard code. The rebels responded in sync, flanking from the vents, firing pulse rounds into exposed joints. They took casualties, 2 fell behind. No time to mourn. They reached detention sector. Iluma's cell was sealed with a biometric ring, needing both retina and voice clearance. But she wasn't unconscious. When Reeve called out, her eyes opened slowly and she pressed her hand to the glass. "She's alive," he said, almost in disbelief. Using an old Earthguard override chip, he bypassed the lock, bypassing Sarathi vocal protocols with his own encrypted signal, one he'd stolen from a Dominion captain's corpse during a forgotten mission years ago. The door slid open. She collapsed into his arms, weak but breathing. "We're getting out," he said. She shook her head. "Core," she whispered. "Control, you must stop them." Reeve paused. He looked at the central hallway ahead, toward the command bridge. This wasn't just about Luma anymore. They moved fast, through emergency bulkheads, past fire suppression systems that hissed like snakes. Alarms blared. The Dominion had detected them, but too late to stop them. Reeve reached the command deck with 4 rebels and Luma, who clung to his back, her fingers gripping his shoulder with what little strength she had left. The command bridge doors loomed before them, sealed, fortified. Behind them, Dominion guards approached. "Blow the door," one rebel said. "No time," said Reeve. "We'll override it." "But," Reeve raised his voice, "I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to reveal." He inserted Luma's signal node into the command interface. The screen glitched, then bloomed into a live feed of the lower decks. Sarathi soldiers executing bound prisoners, rebels, civilians, even children. The footage scrolled on loop, time-stamped. Reeve patched the feed directly into the Dominion's internal comm system. It would transmit to every station across the ship, and every subordinate unit receiving the bridge's orders. "Let them see," he said, his voice cold. The bridge doors opened. Inside stood the Dominion's regional commander, a hulking Sarathi in ceremonial armor. He turned, surprised not by Reeve's presence, but by the child behind him. I could kill you," Reeve said, aiming his weapon. The commander said nothing, only stood taller. "But I won't. That would be too easy." Reeve reached forward and activated the transmission override. Suddenly, all screens across the ship lit up with the feed. The screaming, the executions, the blood. "You wanted obedience," Reeve growled. "Let's see what they do now that they've seen the truth." The shift was almost immediate. Shouts in the hallways, confusion, guards dropping weapons, some trying to silence the feed, others backing away in horror. Dominion soldiers began to argue, then fire upon each other. Rebellion inside the Crown itself. The ship's AI, confused by contradictory commands, began shutdown protocols. Lights flickered, turrets ceased, and then silence. Reeve stepped back, lowering his rifle. The Dominion commander stood frozen, watching his empire crumble from within. He didn't speak again. The rebels secured the bridge. Luma leaned against Reeve's arm, breathing weakly but smiling. "It's done," she whispered. "No," Reeve replied gently. "It's only just begun." The war didn't end with an explosion. There was no parade, no speech, no great declaration echoing across systems. Just silence, the kind that comes after truth is laid bare. The asterisk obsidian crown was left adrift, its systems crippled by internal revolt, its officers either captured or deserted. The rebellion didn't need to fire another shot. Dominion control, fractured not from outside force, but from the weight of its own secrets, finally revealed. Reeve was offered many things: a title within the new council, command of a new peacekeeping force, even a monument. He declined them all. "I'm not a symbol," he told the rebels. "I'm just a man who once got it wrong, and this time tried not to." They didn't argue, perhaps because they knew he meant it. Perhaps because deep down they understood. Some wars are only won when the gun is finally set down. He returned to Series 9. The farm was still there, though half-burned, half-buried in ash. He rebuilt it slowly, without fanfare, restoring the vertical towers, replanting the soil. The land remembered him, so did the wind. But he was not alone this time. They came one by one at first, quiet footsteps on dusty roads, hesitant knocks on the weather-worn door. Sarathi children, orphans, survivors of the old regime. Some had been rescued during the final breach. Others had escaped before the rebellion's last stand. All of them bore the same haunted look Reeve had seen in Luma's eyes that first night in the barn. Luma herself never returned. She had chosen another path, traveling across sectors to build peace where it was needed most. But she had sent them. These children saved because she had survived. Reeve didn't know how to raise children, but he knew how to grow things. So he taught them how to plant seeds, how to fix a broken drone engine with tape and patience, how to read ancient Earth texts about hope and stars. At night, around a fire built from scrap metal and dreams, he told them stories. Not about battles, but about choices. About what it meant to carry pain and still choose kindness. And sometimes, when the sky was clear and the old antenna still worked, he would pull out his battered datapad, aim it toward the stars, and begin a new entry for the satellite still circling overhead. Epoch 9 asterisk. If a man who once pulled a trigger can learn to plant a seed, then maybe a child who once ran from fire can learn to forgive. Epoch 9 blinked above them, a tiny green pulse among the black, a relic of a forgotten world still circling, still listening. To most, it meant nothing, but to Reeve it was enough to believe that something survived, that memories, good or broken, mattered. That remembering was the first step toward something better. One evening, as the orange suns dipped below the edge of the far ridge, one of the children, barefoot, curious, sat beside him with a question that stopped him cold. "Do you think Earth is still alive?" Reeve looked at her. Her skin glowed faintly, the same Sarathi hue as Luma's. Her hands were stained with soil. Her eyes held stars. He thought about the Earth he had once known, about what had been lost, about what still endured. Then he smiled, a small, quiet, certain smile. "If there are still memories," he said, "then Earth never really died." The child leaned into his side, satisfied. The wind picked up softly across the fields, and somewhere far above, Epoch 9 blinked again, a green light in endless dark, steady as a promise.